Well, good evening, everybody. Glad to see everybody out here this evening. It's been, I tried to mow a little bit this evening and got my son a little late coming to youth, and he was all messed up because I took a shower and sat down on the couch and went to sleep. So I wasn't his favorite person this evening, but we talked to Rebecca and they were waiting on him. I'm going to go over some announcements that we have. And I meant to ask, Braden's gone. How did the game night go? I didn't get to come. Y'all have a lot of fun? Good. Well, I'm glad. Okay, on August the 6th, we're going to be feeding the Holston Home for the Children down on Clinch River Farms. That's where the youth went tonight. They went down there on Richard Hudson's farm. They'll be doing lunch and dinner and with campfire devotions with Shane Wicks, and then they're going to have s'mores. And then August the 22nd to the 24th, the Young at Heart trip to Helen, Georgia. Also going to Stone Mountain and a Braves game. And if anybody's still interested in that, they need to let Mary Gross know as soon as possible. So I'm sure they need to get tickets. Have they done got the tickets? Okay, so they done got the tickets. And then August the 28th, Grief Share Fall Session at 5:30 here at the church, and that's going to be hosted by Larry and Bev Thompson. And then December the 14th, the DC trip to Arlington National Cemetery to help put the wreaths on the veterans' graves. If anybody wants to go with that, just let Brother Allen know. And I'm sure they'll finalize some times and everything when they get ready to leave to go to that. It's in December. Okay.
September 7th, the ladies' class,
Okay, honey.
10 to 12. And it's going to be every other week.
September the 7th. Okay, 10 a.m. like it was before. 10 a.m. to 12 here at the church. And that will be every other Thursday or every other Saturday. And that will be hosted by Laura Van Dyke. She's done it before. Okay, all right, we're going to start our song service. I'm going to do like Rick. I'm going to work it from here. I know, that's what Larry was telling me. He said, he asked me, could I tell jokes like Rick? And I said, no, I'm not Rick Mathena. And he said, well, can you squall like he did? That first night he did that, I was sitting back there, I jumped him off the stool. I didn't know what he was doing. But Larry said he's been around kids his whole life, and he's just a big kid. I talked to him the other day, and he said he was going to have to, when he seen me next time, he's going to take something out of my hide. I guess I'm in trouble. We're going to sing our first song, and it's I Stand Amazed, and I'm going to ask everybody to stand. And we will sing the first, second, and third verse of I Stand Amazed. You may be seated. I messed up there. I didn't get the chorus fast enough, and I started to holler back there at Glenn. Okay, our next song is going to be, it's number 406, Just a Closer Walk with Thee. Let's sing the first and the last verse.
So happy for your family member, Mom. Hate it with such circumstances, but good can come out of it. Am I on? Who's glad we've had a bunch of rain? Sort of. Yeah. I had to jump on my lawnmower yesterday. I'm glad it's green. The brown crunchiness doesn't bother me, but my wife it bothers. If it bothers her, it bothers me, don't it? All right. We're going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 is where a lot of the scriptures from. Gene, I tried to add them. I didn't drop background to them, but I tried to add them real quick. My new job, I can't do some things like I used to. I can't get on my phone as much, but that's all right. A story was told a few years ago about an actor who was playing the part of Christ in the Passion Play. And we've had Passion Plays here before. I don't remember who played Jesus in our play when Harold and Larry and all of us had a play. Do you remember who played Jesus? Did Bob play it? I don't remember. You remember? Was it Bob? Yeah. But this is not Bob. You're going to see in just a second. Yeah, he was playing the part of Christ. As he carried the cross up the hill, a bystander in the crowd started heckling him and shouting insults to him. Finally, the actor had taken all he could, so he threw down the cross, walked over to the bystander, and punched him. After the play was over, the director told him, I know he was a pest, but you're fired. He had to fire him. We just can't have you behaving this way while playing the part of Jesus. Now, the actor begged, please give me one more chance. I can handle it. If it happens again, I won't do that again. So the director, he decided to give him another chance. The next day, once again, carrying the cross up the street, sure enough, that same old heckler was back, shouting insults. You could tell that the actor was really trying to control himself, but it was about to get the best of him. He was clenching his fists, grinding his teeth. Finally, he looked at the heckler and said, I'll meet you after the resurrection. That's what he told him. You know, sometimes it's hard for those who profess to be Christians to behave like Christians. Think about that for a second. We try to carry our crosses, but if someone crosses us, do we lose our composure sometimes? And I'm talking to me, folks, and behave in such a way that sometimes it'd be hard to tell me from the rest of the world, hard to tell a Christian from the rest of the world. The Bible teaches that we are to be people who exercise love, and that's what we're talking about tonight in all of our relationships with one another. Ephesians 4, verse 2. With all lowliness and meekness, with long-suffering, forbearing one another in love. And then over in Hebrews 12:14. Follow peace with all men, and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. Make every effort, one version says, to live in peace with all men and to be holy. Now, each of these verses basically say the same thing. It may be difficult sometimes, and not everybody will be easy to love, will they? Maybe not even us. But if it is possible, we are to live in peace and harmony with everyone. So how to get along with other people, and that's what we'll focus on in 1 Corinthians 13. What do we call that chapter a lot? The love chapter. Yeah. Tonight we'll look at 3 verses out of there that Paul begins by saying there in 1 Corinthians 13:1. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, or love, I have become as a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And that's the King James Version. You pull up the NIV. Will you pull that for 1 Corinthians 13:1? I meant to add that, but I forgot. And if I speak in the tongues of men or angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. I love how that's worded. So the importance of love in our lives. Paul, in these verses, I want to show you the best way to take care of virtually every situation. And how do we do that? That's with love, folks. With love. And then he points out that love is more important than 4 other things, and we're going to look at those things. That we as Christians consider very important, those things, but love being so much more important. Verse 1, Paul says that love is more important than what? If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, he says, it's more important than that spiritual gift that he's given there. On the day of Pentecost, when the first gospel sermon was ever preached, God gave them that special gift of being able to speak in languages that they'd never learned, so that people hearing them could understand what was being said. But here in 1 Corinthians, Paul says that if God gave him the gift of speaking every human language and even the heavenly language of angels, but he didn't have love, then he would be nothing more than a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And what do you mean by that? Think about that. Back in the first century, there was a big gong or cymbal hanging at the entrance of most of the pagan temples. When people came to worship, they hit them to awaken the pagan gods so they would listen to the prayers. And here Paul's saying that even if he were so blessed that he could speak with the greatest eloquence in every language, but it didn't have love, then his life was as useless as these ridiculous acts he's talking about, of pounding on a gong to awaken a non-existing God. You see, love is more important than any gift. And then in 1 Corinthians 13:2, let's go to that one. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains, then he says, and have not charity, have not love, I am nothing. Look at the importance that he's putting on love. Paul says that even if you know it all, like it said like that, if you know everything there is to know, even about science, medicine, philosophy, psychology, every other ology, if you know it all, but if you don't have love, Paul says, then you have nothing at all. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 8:1, did I put that one on? Yeah. Now as touching things offered up unto idols, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge what? Puffeth up, but charity edifies. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. I don't think we need more knowledge near as much as we need more love. For the hearts of people need to change before society will ever change. And thirdly, Paul says that love is more important than faith. 1 Corinthians 13:2 there. Go back to it. If I have faith that can remove mountains but have not love, I am nothing. Take a lot of faith. I think you can move a mountain, doesn't it? But what is your faith? What do you believe for sure? Do you believe that God is the creator of the world? Do you believe that Jesus Christ is his only begotten Son, and that he came into our world and lived a sinless life, and that he died and was buried, and on the third day rose again? Do you believe that he is now at the right hand of the Father and is preparing a place for us, and that one day he will come again? If you believe all those things, then well and good. That's great, isn't it? It's a great thing. But the Bible teaches that if you believe all the right things, but you don't have love, then it's nothing. Nothing. Because even faith is of no value unless it is backed up by love. The priest and the Levite in the parable of the Good Samaritan, we all know that story. They had faith. Their problem was what? They had no love to leave him. So they walked by on the other side and just left the man lying there to die. Galatians 5, verse 6, Paul says, For in Jesus Christ neither circumcision availeth anything nor uncircumcision, but faith which worketh by love. Love is ingrained in every aspect. Fourthly, love is more important than generosity. Paul says, if I give all I possess, 1 Corinthians 13, verse 3. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, so you're giving everything you got, and though I give my body to be burned and have not charity, I don't have love, it profiteth me nothing. Such a good person to give everything they got to feed the poor, he says. If I give 10%, he didn't just give 10% there, did he? If I empty my checking account, if I cash in my insurance policies, if I give everything away to help the poor and even sacrifice myself, but I don't have love, then I gain nothing at all. Nothing. You see, generosity by itself, it's not enough, Paul says. I get calls all the time, the church does, you do, from people what? Appealing for funds. We know a lot of them are scams now. Some of them are worthwhile causes, maybe. But why give? Do you give because the preacher just preached a message on stewardship, or because you feel guilty if you don't? Do you give because you want to impress people around you? If the only reason that I give is to receive or to benefit myself, love is nowhere in that, is it? Nowhere. And giving is empty. The motive for giving has to be love. It's more important than faith and more important than generosity. So how do we... I tried to think about this today. How did I practice God's love today? Think back through your day today. Obviously, love is very important, much more maybe than we ever realize. I didn't give you John. Will you pull up John 13:34? King James, either one, doesn't matter. John 13, verse 34. I usually bold all my scripture, and I was in a hurry and I didn't bold it, I guess. There we go. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another, as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. Now notice that Jesus says that this is a commandment. He's not suggesting, folks. He's telling us to do it. God never commands us to do anything that we cannot do. Now think about that. I know where I'll be going with this. We tend to think that love is something that just happens, because that is what the world teaches, isn't it? You fall in love like you fall into a ditch. Or you fall out of love like you fall out of a tree. You can't help it. It's something that just happens to you. That's what the world teaches. We sing these old songs or heard these old songs. I can't help falling in love with you. Those kinds of things. They seem to have deep meaning, the touchy-feely stuff. The Bible teaches that love is something we can control. God commands us to love each other, which means I can decide to love you. Think about that for a minute. And you, in turn, can decide to love me. So this is not a hopeless situation, is it? Now, what kind of love is being talked about here? Philippians 2, verse 4. Paul tells us, look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. In other words, to love in the same way that Jesus loved, the interest of others. Think about others and their interests, just like you think about yourself and your interests. I thought about that. Do I put the interest of others above my interest? Sometimes not. But we're supposed to, aren't we? Sometimes we become, or we should become, unselfish with our love. And let's apply that in several different areas. First of all, see how that would work in the family. Let's suppose that someone in every family represented here tonight would say, I'm going to go home, put this into practice at home. Start with your spouse. You ought to love your husband or your wife first and most. You ought to be kinder, more tender, more gentle to them, even if they're behaving I'll be delicate, questionably. My wife's in the crowd, or I could be a little more direct. Think about that thing. If we did that at home. Begin first in our marriage, our relationship at home. Pretty soon it filters down what? To our kids. Maybe even the in-laws. I got some in-laws here tonight. through marriage. Think about that. Maybe everybody else in the family. Just because you love them like God did. It begins in the family. It spills over into the church family and into the world. In fact, Jesus said in John 13:35, "By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another." You want to look and act like Jesus Christ? Right there it is. Love one another. That's the way the world will find out that the message of Jesus Christ is valid. And if we really love each other the way Jesus loved us, then we have to develop that in our own lives. That same kind of compassion, that same kind of caring, that same kind of love that Jesus had. A friend told about renting the movie Free Willy. Anybody remember seeing that on the, and watching it with his grandchildren? He said that they were enthralled, especially one grandson who was almost 5. His grandson set his little chair in front of the TV and didn't move it for 2 hours as he watched that movie. How many times have you seen a 5-year-old sit for 2 hours for anything? Not very often. His eyes were fixed on the screen. He was mesmerized. He watched everything. You could see tears in his eyes. You could see him laugh when he was supposed to laugh. He was totally caught up in the movie. Can you remember getting caught up into something and so identifying with what's going on that you actually become involved in the story? That's seeing compassion in it. You're feeling the problems, the trials, the love, the things that someone else is going through. And sometimes it'll cause us to ask some tough questions. What's it like to hurt deep inside? And no one knows you're hurting, and you don't feel free to tell them that you're hurting. What is it like being sick and knowing you're not going to get well and wanting more than anything else to live? What is it like to be handicapped? What's it like to be a minority? What's it like to be dealing with marital problems or domestic problems? What's it like? What kind of burdens are people carrying, and do we care enough to help them bear those burdens? That's what it means when Jesus talks about loving one another as he loved us. There's a story about a missionary, Doug Nichols, that I want to share, and it illustrates what we've been talking about tonight. Doug went to India, but while he was just starting to study the language, he developed tuberculosis and had to be put in a sanitarium in a foreign country in India. And it was not a very good place to be. It was not very clean, and conditions were difficult because there were so many sick people there. But Doug decided to do the best he could in that situation. So he took some Christian books and tracts and tried to witness to other patients there in the sanitarium. He tried to witness, but he was handicapped because of his inability to communicate very well in their language. He hadn't learned their language yet very well. And he felt so discouraged. He tried to pass out those Christian tracts and books, but no one would even hardly take him. Here he was, because of his illness, he would be there for a long time. But it seemed like the work that he had come to India to do would not be done because no one would listen to him. Because of his tuberculosis, every night at about 2 o'clock, he'd wake up with a chronic cough that wouldn't quit. And then one night, when he awoke, he noticed across the aisle from him an old man in another bed just trying to get out of the bed. And he said the man would roll himself up in a little ball and rock back and forth, trying to get momentum to get up and stand on his feet. But he just couldn't do it. He was too weak. And finally, after several attempts, the old man laid back and wept and cried. And Doug saw this. And the next morning, Doug understood why the man was weeping. He was trying to get up to go to the bathroom and didn't have enough strength to do that. So his bed was a mess. There was smell in the air. The other patients made fun of the old man. The nurses came to clean him up, and they weren't very kind to him. One even slapped him on the shoulder. Didn't want him to do that like he had any control. Doug said that the old man just laid there and cried. Doug said the next night, 2 o'clock, he started coughing again. And I looked across the way, and there was the old man again, trying to get out of bed once more. He said, I really didn't want to do it, but somehow I managed to get up. I walked across over to him and helped the old man stand up. But he was too weak to walk. So Doug said, I took him in my arms and I carried him like a baby. He was so light that it wasn't a difficult task. I took him into the bathroom, which was nothing more than a dirty hole in the floor, and I stood behind him and supported him with my arms as he took care of himself. And then I carried him back to his bed, laid him down, and as I turned to leave, he reached up and grabbed my face and pulled me close and kissed me on the cheek and said what I think was thank you, because he didn't know his language. Doug said the next morning there were patients waiting when I woke, and they asked if they could read some of the books and tracts that I'd brought. And others had questions about the God that I worshiped and about his Son who came into the world to die for their sins. Doug says that in the next few weeks he gave out all the literature that he brought. And during the months that he was there, many of the patients and even the doctors and nurses in that sanitarium came to accept Jesus as their Savior. He said, now what did I do? I didn't preach a sermon. I couldn't even communicate very well in their language. I didn't have a brilliant lesson to teach them or wonderful things to show them. All I did was take an old man to the bathroom. And anyone could do that. Someone has said they will not care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's our life as Christians, folks. There is a more excellent way, and that is the way of Jesus Christ. Tonight, if you don't know Jesus Christ, come and find his love. Give your life to him. There's nothing like the love of Jesus Christ. He loved us so much. And sometimes I think we hear these lessons about love so much that we don't stop and concentrate and think about just how much it means to God. He tells us over and over in these scriptures that we read tonight how important love is. He knew how he loved us because he was going to send the best that he had to send Jesus to die for our sins because we were such a sinful people. But he died for everyone so they could have the salvation that God was offering. So tonight as we stand and we sing, we ask that if you have a decision to make, please don't wait one more day. Come as we sing. Let's sing the first and the last verse. Jesus is tenderly calling.